I want people to consider what is being lost and to think about means of regeneration. Much of my work is therefore a defense of idiosyncrasy, of eccentricity, of the right of a place like Batavia to be itself, to be different from other places, to have its own pace and language and character, even its own sins. In his novel Remembering, Wendell Berry describes a middle-aged writer, quote, "Years ago he resigned himself to living in cities. That was what his education was for, as his teachers all assumed and he believed. Its purpose was to get him away from home, out of the country, to some place where he could live up to his abilities. He needed an education, and the purpose of an education was to take him away," end quote. Our schools do not offer a major in home. When I was in college at the University of Rochester, those many years ago, there was not a single course about Rochester, about a culture that had produced Susan B. Anthony, George Eastman, the mature Frederick Douglass, and the Mangione family. The local was disparaged. Even worse, it was ignored. It didn't exist. There was nothing of Rochester in the University of Rochester. What a huge, gaping, empty shame. I hope and trust Alfred University is different. I sort of doubt it. But whatever the case, Alfred is more than just an address. Batavia is not just an address. Where you live, where you're from, is not just an address. And the people who treat it as just another dot on the map, indistinguishable from all the other dots, are the most dangerous people of all. We now live 5 miles north of Batavia, in Elba, apt address for an exile. Lucine, my wife, I know with pride, is our town supervisor. I tell her she's probably the highest ranking Armenian American official in America. Or at least she will be until the voters of California elect Cher to the U.S. Senate. She couldn't be any worse, right? Dana Gioia, the excellent California poet, who by some strike of lightning became the chairman of the National Endowment for the Arts, appointed by George W. Bush, the least poetic president since, Bill Clinton. Anyway, Dana Gioia has a poem in which he walks through a California cemetery. Depressing, treeless, stoneless, griefless places. No wonder people out there want to live forever. The poet hears the voices of the dead, the rootless dead. We lived in places we never knew. We could not name the birds perched on our sill, or see the trees we cut down for our view. What we possessed, we always chose to kill. These shades that cast no shadow, ask the poet with a kind of despairing insistence, become the voice of our forgotten places. Teach us the names of what we have destroyed. Teach us the names of what we have destroyed. It is our responsibility, our ennobling duty to those who've gone before and those who will come after, to say the names, to tell the stories that attach to those names, to embroider those stories, to make myth of the quotidian, poetry of the prosaic. America, turn in and find yourself, urged the Iowa poet Paul Engel. We're going to have to do this on our own, without any help from the TV networks, the newspaper chains, the corporate music labels. DIY, as the old punk rock ethos went. Do it yourself. Across America, people are doing it themselves. What else are farm markets and CSAs and historic preservation and buy local all about? Bob Dylan's favorite poet, the antebellum South Carolinian Henry Timrod, commanded, "Poet, if on a lasting fame be bent thy unperturbing hopes, thou wilt not roam too far from thine own happy heart and home. Cling to the lowly earth and be content." Well, that's easier said than done, I suppose. Or maybe not. Maybe it's easier done than said. America, the myth goes, is a land of perpetual motion, of restless pioneers striking out for the West. Or in our time, of restive television addicts lighting out for Las Vegas with a mini set in the SUV playing Everybody Loves Raymond DVDs. So that unlike the Jodes, members of this family don't have to talk to one another. We are supposedly always moving, never stopping, consumed by what William Cullen Bryant called the vain low strife that makes men mad. And yet the best American writers, even those who follow their characters on rafts down the Mississippi, even those who title books On the Road or You Can't Go Home Again, are almost always attached to a place. Not simply a mailing address, but a real individuated place that's different from any other place on earth. Sarah Orne Jewett in South Berwick, Maine. Sinclair Lewis in Minnesota. Wendell Berry in Henry County, Kentucky. Thoreau in Concord. The list goes on and takes in every state, every region. And if it doesn't, alas, include every hill and vale in our lovely land, well, that's all the more invitation for young writers to stake their claims. I seem to have strayed from autobiography and into sermonizing, but hey, it's Sunday morning. It's such a temptation to fall into despair when we look at the world around us. The corporate economy in free fall, or maybe that's good news. A coarse, trashy popular culture. A bloated militaristic empire seemingly engaged in perpetual war. Our country is lost.